Welcome. Hi, this is Carol Mixon. We're going to be talking today about protecting tenant information. And that's a tough thing to do sometimes, but we can do it for sure. When we're talking about security and privacy, the customers want to have a safe and clean place to store their goods. And they also expect some sort of privacy from the manager and from other tenants. They don't want people gawking at what they have and looking at things. And I know in the past I've heard people say that people would walk by and then have things stolen out of their space, and they think it's because they're looking inside and they are able to see what's there and getting the goodies out, I guess. People inquiring about a person at your property. Let's talk about that first. When someone comes up and says, hey, is so and so here? What unit number is it? Renters really expect you to use their space without other gawkers, and they don't want you to tell anyone besides the tenant anything about the space itself. And there would be exceptions to this. I would say the police, the FBI, generally they're going to need a warrant. But if you have the authorities coming to you, we definitely can get with them and talk with them. If you have some person that's doing something bad, you want to know about it, and their privacy. Well, at that point, I would be able to. I think you could tell someone the unit number if it's the authority. I think you should have policies for giving non-tenant information. What is your policy? What information can you give out to people who are non-tenants? I think when you're thinking about this, and maybe this is something that you need to talk with your owner about, or maybe you've talked about that in meetings with different company meetings that you've had. But it is important to know is what information can you give out? For example, I believe that you should not give out the unit numbers, the customer's address, any credit card numbers. That's sort of an obvious, right? But that's personal information that people don't want to get out anywhere else. So it's important to remember we've got to keep it under control and not have it accessible to people, or easy to find or easy to get to, and that includes the employees. I think keeping things locked and especially like credit cards in a certain place where they're just not handy for anyone to get to. Delinquent customers contacting. So when you're contacting delinquent customers, you're getting the phone, you're giving email addresses, you're doing messaging, but who can you talk to? That's a very common question that I'm asked. The spouse or other person that's listed is okay to speak to, but if they're on the rental agreement, so they need to be on the rental agreement for you to be able to interact with them about information. And all correspondence should be sent to the actual customer and the alternate if your law requires that, or whatever's on your rental agreement. And sometimes there are companies that say, we only allow one person on the contract. But what's really weird to me about that is when I've been married, several times I've been married, I think about this because I have the right to be on that contract just as well as my husband would. So I do think that's a strange thing that if your husband's on it, you can't be on it. That seems weird to me because, and I've had that happen before at storage properties where I've stored, and they said, I'm sorry, we can't give you the code because only your husband's on the contract. I said, yes, because we were both in here, but you required just one person on there. I said, we even got the tenant, we got that agreement for you. So I knew the company, and they finally gave me the thing, but it was ridiculous. So you have to be practical about your policies. Remember the alternate address and that contact person. And I'll give you a good, for example, this. California requires that you have a place on your rental agreement for that alternate address or that other contact for lien notices. And this does not address who should access the space or who is responsible for the space. And they don't owe any money on the debt. If it's you have an alternate address, it doesn't mean that they owe anything or they're going to be responsible for the debt. It only means that they're an alternate way to contact the customer. Is the alternate address allowed information? So basically, if you have a place on the rental agreement that's for the alternate or that additional name, you should be clear to the tenant what that person is allowed to do in relation to getting the access to the information about the space. Does that mean that no access at all, or no information at all, or can't move out of the space? What does that mean? Because some states, like not California, example, California is just for lien notices, but you might have some other thing on your agreement about another person allowed to access. And I've also had business, a form that I have, that the business form basically says these are the employees who are allowed into the property. I had a Xerox company, and so Xerox was always the one that paid, but they constantly had different drivers and things that were coming into the property. So that's important to know that you may have some exceptions to that based on the type of clients that you have. The other thing is checking ID or verifying information over the phone. You can give out, someone calls you up and they say, hey, I don't remember my code. Can you give it to me? I would be happy to do that for them, but you need to check or verify the ID. So you have that information, or you should have that information in your software. So have a policy about that. Make whatever policy that is. Maybe you're going to get the driver's license number. Maybe you just ask them for their billing address that you have on file, something like that. But make sure that your company has a policy about how to handle people over the phone that are calling up. Sometimes they just call up and say, hey, I forgot my code. What is it? And then some people say, well, you got to come in to get it, and they can't come in during the times you're there, or they need to get access later. So be flexible about this, but have some way besides actually them being in front of you to find out or to give them the information. Payment. So who can pay on the space? Well, anyone can pay on a space, frankly, in my world at least. If they have a credit card, make sure that you use a form and make sure that it's noted in there that it's a non-tenant paying for the tenant. And I'll give you an example of that, because the form that I use, and actually, if you would like this, we would send it to you free if you email us at info@skillcheck.com. But it's a non-tenant credit card authorization form, and basically, it's saying at the top you can see one-time payment or automatic payment. Maybe it's mom's paying for the kid, and they're going to, they're a college student and they want to use mom's card, yet the tenant's in the student's name. So you want to have the space number, the amount, the due date, but it does say here, I hereby authorize blank the company, your company, that would be your company name in there. And you can put this in your software, and you can fill it out there too. And then put, I hereby said charges authorized to be in the amount of or equal to the monthly rent. So it basically is going to cover you. If the above card is declined for any reason, that the tenant will be responsible for the rents. That's the important part. Late fees and other charges pursuant to the rental agreement. So if somebody's card doesn't go through that was not the tenant, then you're still covered. Let's talk about police access to information. I just love this police car. When I saw this, I'm like, I might be a police officer if I could run around in a car like actually, I would really maybe in another life I would choose to be a police officer. But think about this: police can have access to information. If they're in hot pursuit, and this has happened several times at my stores, where there was someone that came through the gate, and it was one of our customers came through the gate, and then the police were right behind him. They came into the office and they said, we need to access that. We just had the person that stole some things from a store, and we're after him. So also, if they have a warrant and if they have the owner's permission, if the police come in and they get the owner's permission to go in, that's perfectly fine to do. Controlled gate access code. Now, this is an interesting thing. Now, not all stores have this, but if yours does, if you have a gate code that has to go in, or maybe you have a code that goes into the building, the tenant, are you going to be able to give this information over the phone? Is that verifying the license, their billing address? Decide within your company what that information is they're going to have to verify before they're able to get that code over the phone. Because fairly often they're coming in after hours when you're not there and they don't remember the code. Lots of people don't remember the code. It's always a good thing to have a little card with the code on it. Tell them to keep them in their glove compartments, something like that. I always supply that in new rentals. This would be something that your company really needs to determine what to do about this and how to handle it. And something interesting about this is who has the code and the key. That's what I would say. When sometimes people are come in and say, well, do you have the code and the key to get in? You're allowed in. For example, if Homer gives his grandfather Abraham the key and the code, Abraham can get in the space. Is it in Abraham's name? No. But if Homer gave that to his grandpa, then he can actually get in. So if they don't know the unit number, A courtesy call to the tenant would probably just work. Just easy enough. Call Homer up if you knew where Homer lived and get that code. Gotta have a little humor there today. Remember, try to be nice and kind. In a world where you can be anything, why not be kind, right? I love that saying. And Anon, I believe, is anonymous. But instead of telling people in a harsh way, we can't tell you the unit number, try something just more pleasant and say, unfortunately, for the customer security, we're not allowed to give the customer's unit number out. And that's just an easy way to handle that. Well, thank you so much for watching. And I'd really like to thank Hannah Kissack because she said, hey, will you do a webinar on this? I think it would be great. And she's the assistant property manager at All Season Storage in Wilmington, North Carolina. So thank you so much for bringing this to me. And any of you that have some topic that you would like me to tackle, please let me know. I would love to help and any way I can. And please subscribe. Thank you so much and happy renting.